It doesn't.
No. Now, there were this young group of people, I call them the first globals, 18 to 29-year-olds with passports, just a completely different worldview. But these are the kids that went to the integrated schools. And these are the kids who've seen the integrated television ads and images in magazines. More importantly, they're likely to answer yes to a question, have you been to a party of someone where someone African-American is present? These are white kids. Have you, in a job, have you had a supervisor who's African-American? This is a different world for them. And you add to that then, well, the internet. And you add to the fact that many of them have traveled abroad. And all you have to do is just leave this country and realize that the majority of the world is African and Asian and so on. It doesn't matter with a lot of white kids. And Barack Obama is not the African-American candidate to them. He's a cool guy.
Yeah. The discussion is leading its way right through the themes that I'd wanted to talk about, and just in perfect sequence, I now want to put up on the screen those 4 demographic groups that you define in the book. Because what's interesting is that the transformations that are taking place are not uniform. They're felt differently on different levels, and you have these 4 groups, the new globals, the Nike generation, you call them, who are 30 to 43 at this point, Woodstock generation, 44 to 62, and the private generation, you call it, from 63 to 72 and above, right after the greatest generation crowd. Talk, if you would, about, let's start with the private generation and go backwards and describe each of their characteristics, if you would.
We start with the Cold War and the height of the Cold War, and the next generation from the greatest generation, in the sense that they've grown up with a sense of patriotism, a sense of older community, but also they are either parents or at least adults already by the time the 60s happens. And in many instances, the 60s kind of passes them by. They're a private generation in the sense that they're not the greatest, and they're not us, the baby boomers, the loudest. What they've done over the years is simply played by the rules, lived their lives, and appreciate really an older America. On the other hand, they're on the verge of heroism, because they're really the first generation that's going to have close to 1 million of them who live to be the age of 100, which means they're going to pave the way and teach us about post-retirement. And so already, and I didn't coin this term, Robert Fogel did, they've moved and are moving from earn work, which describes itself, to vol work, volunteer work. And you see that happening already. They're the mentors, they're the tutors, they're the hospital volunteers. They're the ones who are beginning to go to remote places like Africa, and Latin America, and do good things.
That's John McCain's generation.
That's John McCain's generation.
Yeah. Let's go to the next group, the Woodstockers.
I was there, you know.
That's your generation.
That's my generation.
I'm on the cusp. Yeah. Between the private and the other. Okay.
Yeah, and you have always told me it's all about me, you know, and that's the downside of us. I was at Woodstock, and I was absolutely appalled by it, and that's where I came up with the theme. Because it was all about solipsism. Is that a good word for the show here? It's all about me, and all about me and my needs. We're the ones that created the need for L'Oreal and Just for Men, and trying to look like our kids.
The narcissist generation.
The narcissist, yeah. Call me Trish, don't call me Ma. Now it's call me Trish, don't call me Grandma. Yeah. You know? And a lot has been made out of the Woodstock generation, but it's time for a second act. I wrote about this when Hillary was getting close to dropping out of it.
What intrigued me in this presidential contest was that this is the first time now in a number of years that we're not going to have a Woodstocker running. And I almost think that our generation has forfeited the right to govern precisely because they've handled it so badly. But let's go to the next crowd, the Nike generation.
These are the kids that grew up with 1/3 of families ending in divorce. These are the kids that grew up or came into the world at the time of Watergate. In short order, this is a group that came up, that grew up without a sense of powerful institutions. And they have spent and are spending their adult lives trying to rebuild and put these institutions back together again. But their motto is just do it. Why? Because there are no rules. There are no institutions. There are no limits that make sense. And now this group, in many ways, as it reaches its 30s and 40s, are now looking, to kind of put it back together again, and not a second act, but really a first act in their lives.
Well, we're going to talk about the new globals, but I want you to pay attention, listeners, to the book, because what you're going to see next is some rather stunning numbers that I pulled out of from the book, from the hard data that actually shows really visually how different these generations will be. Yeah, let's look first at the issue of environment, how they look at the environment, and we'll put those numbers up. This is the first question that we're gonna put up on the screen. Just a second of a delay here, and it's this: do you use less energy because of your concern with carbon emissions? Now, 18 to 27, 65% say yes. When you get to the older generation, it's over 50% say, I don't. And it's not an issue for me at all. Let's go to the next one, just quickly to put the two up together, because they both kind of, in fact, go together. It's do you believe that alternative fuels, wind power and solar power, et cetera, can help create thousands of new jobs? Strongly agree. Younger, the new globals, 52%. Of those 62 and older, 30, and then 81 older, 19. They just don't even believe in alternative energy sources. There's a different, almost a world view. Younger kids buy Priuses, and older just don't see the need for it.
Yeah, let's lay it on the line. 18 to 29-year-olds are still 18 to 29-year-olds. They're consumed with a relationship, career, self in many ways, but there is clearly a new mindset here. There's no question about it. It's cosmopolitan. It's a sense of living in a world that's larger than my community. One number that isn't up here are the percentage of these first globals that say, I'm a citizen of the planet Earth before I'm a citizen of the United States.
Whose sense of patriotism, in a sense, means that I don't litter, that I save the earth, and as opposed to fight and die in some far-off land.
And you mentioned the word litter, and there have been skeptics of some of my themes, and they've said, but the American people aren't ready. Just like the 70s to the 80s, if gas prices were to go down, we're back to buying SUVs, we're back to Hummers, and the answer is no. And it's because of this younger generation, but it's also because when I first started polling, as you know, I was polling in small communities, and some of the jobs I took had to do with those very issues. Recycling. Oh, skeptics say, you're never going to get people to recycle. People recycle. You're not going to get people to stop littering. Remember when we drive along the highway, when we ride out in the country, and you'd see the station wagon in front of you roll the window down and shoot a bag of groceries out onto the highway? It doesn't happen anymore.
What's interesting is that in many ways, it's been driven by our kids. If I do litter, or did litter, I don't anymore, but if I didn't recycle, when we go on family vacations, if I don't recycle, my kids are furious with me. It has become a defining issue for their sense of responsibility, is do we take care of planet Earth? Let's look at this other one. This is a question of patriotism. And I think it's intriguing. The question is, big issues made in America. Is being made in America important to you when you buy a product? 27, 39, 49%. When you get 65 and older, 59%, it is. What does that say? We're living in an interdependent world. More and more of our manufactured goods are made in China. Apparently, a younger audience doesn't care.